Okay, welcome to today's lesson on mercantilism and the idea of how do you become a world power. We're going to look really at what makes countries powerful, but first let's talk about what makes people powerful. So think about this, write down a couple ideas. What makes people as individuals powerful? Okay, so here are some ideas that you might have come up with. Maybe it's intelligence, maybe it's being really influential or likable, maybe it's physical strength and dominance, something that's a little bit old-fashioned seeming. Maybe it's wealth. In terms of images, you could have your physical strength like Arnold Schwarzenegger, or your wealth like Bill Gates, the intelligence of Albert Einstein, the influence of the Pope, whether you agree with them or not. They have a tremendous amount of influence because there are a lot of followers. Or the good looks of Fabio. What do you think it could be? I don't know, but I know that if you mix them all together, you're going to get one thing. You know what that is? Or really should be one person. You guessed it, Super Wilson. Okay, on to our target for today. I can identify the three main parts to mercantilism and explain how they benefit a country. So mercantilism, we're really looking here at how do you become powerful as a country. There are three rules, and the reality is this whole idea of mercantilism, it focuses on the economy. That's a little starting point. And second off, it doesn't really apply to the modern times as much as it did to the 15 and 16 and 1700s. So that's something we're looking at. So this is an old target here made by one of my students years and years ago. So, same old thing every day. Just hitting the target. Bird flies by and they say, hey, you thought I was going to shoot the bird, didn't you? And apparently you were right. And they wanted to kill my bird. Poor bird. Okay, on to class here. So let's talk about some key questions here before we actually get into what mercantilism means and the three rules. Let's talk about the economy first and make sure you have an understanding of what the economy really is. According to Webster's dictionary, it is the wealth and resources of a country or region, especially in terms of the production and consumption of goods and services. Sounds like a mouthful, doesn't it? So in other words, how much money they have and what are they doing in terms of using goods and services. Goods being products that you can buy, and services being things that you can do to help others. A service is like teaching, right? You don't give anybody intelligence and understanding. It's something that they just kind of acquire through that. Basically, the one thing I would say is when we look at an economy, it's how do you use the resources available to you, and also how many resources are available there. So really, the thing that I want you to be thinking about as we look at the economy, especially in terms of history, the more money and resources a country has, the stronger it will be. It's pretty straightforward because if you have money and if you have resources, you can do a whole lot, right? You can provide people with jobs and you can do things like that are going to help your economy within your country. But you can also purchase weapons, you can purchase supplies, you can purchase all kinds of things that are going to be super, super important for countries as we move forward. And think about this, whenever your economy is doing well and you have lots of money, what is the cause and effect here? It's kind of like a little cycle, and when it's good and great, really. So let's say that the economy is doing well. That means that all or nearly all people have jobs. Why is this good? Well, think about this. In our country, let's say in America, if somebody doesn't have a job and they do not have enough money to support themselves, then the government needs to support those people. Now, that's one way that it hurts the economy is because the government is actually paying for these people to survive with welfare types of programs. So that means that tax money is going to those people directly. On top of that, if somebody is not working, they're not paying taxes off of their income, which is a really, really big deal because we want to have that tax money in our government's hands. Or I should say our government wants to have that tax money in their hands. That's debatable whether we want that or not. But nonetheless, so for the government, if you're paying for people to live, you're not gaining tax money and you're giving them money. It's like getting hit twice with the same problem. That's not really good. And the more tax money that they are earned without raising taxes, equals a stronger and happier country. Because for your parents, I'm sure that they'll tell you they don't want to pay more taxes, right? But if the country is doing well and they're generating a lot of tax revenue without your parents having to pay higher rates of taxes, that's going to make everybody happy because then the government gets what it needs, or I shouldn't really say needs, but what it claims it needs, and then your parents also get to keep the money that they're earning, or at least a larger portion of it. So here's how it looks when it's going well. You have people making money, therefore they can spend their money. And when they're spending their money, that means that more products are needed. And when more products are needed, new businesses need to be created to meet that new demand, which means that there are more jobs available. Now think about how this works, and since there are more jobs available, people are making even more money. Because if there are a lot of jobs, that means there's less competition for positions, and that means that the job pay is going to have to go up. So that makes everybody happy when the economy is doing well. On the other hand, when the economy is not doing very well, that means people are not making a lot of money. Therefore, they can't spend a lot of money, which means that less products are needed, which means that less businesses are needed, and ultimately jobs are lost. And then this leads to people making less money overall because there are too many people in the marketplace competing for one job. Therefore, companies are going to lower the cost that they're going to be willing to pay people because they can, because people are desperate for jobs. So overall, this is not a good situation. It's frowny face and tears. Yes, it's sad. So, whenever you look at anything in history, always remember this question. Will this benefit the economy? You love that circling / crossing it out. I didn't mean to cross it out. But you get the point here. Will it benefit the economy? So if you can look at a situation that's occurring in history, and you can say to yourself, you know what, is it going to be a benefit to the economy for them to go to war right now? And if the answer is yes, you're going to see that the country is going to do what it takes. Because when the economy is doing well, everything else works out. So, moving forward here. On mercantilism. It's an 18th century guide to power. So what is it? What are the three parts? Well, mercantilism is a theory on the best way to make a nation powerful. It was used in the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. So we're looking here at later, more past history here, getting up into the 1800s. It deals with the economy with the goal being to make as much money as possible. Now, how do you do that? There are 3 steps. Number 1, you build an empire. When you build an empire, this enables you to colonize places that have great free resources, free in quotes. So new land, new resources, cheaper resources, that's all good. Then you can turn these resources into products. So you get new resources like, let's say, timber. Then you can make new ships with them. And with the new ships, you can sell them, which is new money that you previously wouldn't have had in your economy because you didn't have the ability to sell those products. And that means you can get more people, more taxes, and more money for the government. Keep in mind, that's our end result there. More money for the government. So we start off here with new land and new resources, and it's going to work its way all the way down if you look at the cause-effect relationship to more money for your government. That's really what they want. Second, you need to make sure that your exports are greater than your imports. What does this really mean? Now, let's understand the vocabulary here as well. We're looking at trade right now. So when you trade in a country, you want to export more than you import. In other words, you want to trade more stuff out of your country to other people than you bring in from other countries. Why is this? It's pretty simple. When you export an item, let's say that America exports, I'm going to make something up here. Let's say that we export computers to France. When we sell those items to France, we're going to give them a product, and in return, they're going to give us cash. They're going to give us this money. And having that extra money in our country and in our economy, that's really good. So that's like earning money. Imports work the exact opposite way, and that's what we want to avoid with this import-export relationship. Imports are goods brought into the country. So let's say then that we're bringing in, I don't know, let's say clothing from France, a bunch of clothing from France. As we buy that clothing, that's American money that's being paid to France so that we can bring clothes. So what do we get out of this trade? We get clothing. What does France get? They get our cash and our money. We don't want that to occur. So whenever you're doing this whole mercantilist relationship on trade, you want to make sure that you're exporting far more than you're importing. Very, very good. Okay? It's kind of like an earning, spending type of relationship here. Third, you need to have a very, very strong military. In particular, you need a strong Navy. So make sure that you understand it's all about the Navy at this point in time in history. In modern times, it changes a little bit, but really mercantilism is a little bit old-fashioned anyways. So build a strong Navy to impose your will. This helps with trade, because remember, trade really is the key in the economy. It also helps you to protect your country and your colonies. At this point in time in history, you can't really protect yourself with an army quite as easily, because your army you're going to need to move around, or I should say it's going to need to be very stable, whereas a navy you can move around a little bit more easily. So the navy becomes super, super, super important. And the one thing to think about is a secure nation, it can build a strong economy. When 9/11 occurred, that really, really hurt our economy because people didn't feel safe, they didn't want to spend their money. It led to some other issues. Now, when we look at practicing mercantilism, England followed this policy, but were they the only ones? The answer is no. And this is where it's time for you guys to take a little bit of a break here to do some mental sweat questions. So, our questions that I want you to consider right now. First off, and by the way, push pause whenever we get through this so you can answer the questions and then come back to them. First question. Our country's economy has been in a crisis over the past few years. What do you think some signs are of a struggling economy? We already did this, so go back a few slides here if you want to look at that. Number 2, and by the way, remember, 30 seconds, answer the question first before you move on. If a country exports $30 million worth of goods and imports $45 million worth of goods, is it following mercantilist ideals? Explain why or why not. 30 seconds there. And third, Apply the fundamental question, will this benefit to the economy, to each of the three parts of mercantilism, and explain why it is a benefit, because obviously it is, or else we wouldn't have discussed it. So think of the three ideas, and then go and connect it back. 4, and again 30 seconds on that last question. It was mentioned in the PowerPoint that England was not the only country following mercantilist ideals. Identify other countries involved and how this could lead to conflict. So, which other countries do you think are doing this, and why is this going to lead to potential issues? 30 seconds. And finally, number 5. It has been said that power corrupts. Explain why this can be true. With corrupt meaning to cause to act dishonestly in return for money or personal gain. It's one of those quotes I like. What do you think? 30 seconds.